All right, so let's talk about attribution, what it is, and why it's so important these days, and why you hear it so much. Because we're in real estate, we're going to talk specifically about how it applies to real estate and real estate investing. So let's take a look at a definition real quick. So there's a lot of definitions out there. A lot of them are really technical. I like this one because I thought it was pretty digestible. So it's kind of my favorite, but really, it's a method for understanding what part of your funnel is working and what part isn't. So what does that really mean? It means that, number one, we're providing transparency. And more importantly, I guess that's important, but I guess just as important, let's say, is mitigating bias. So it helps us to have a way to look at actual information, take real feedback, what's really happening in a market, and feed it back into our system. Why is that important? Well, how many of you guys have seen this before? You look at this and say, hey, what is this? What are we looking at here? Is that a dog? Is that an alien? Is it an angel with big wings? Is it something like that? No. No, it's a piece of ink that's been dumped on paper, and then the paper was bent in half and squeezed and splatted. So basically just a bunch of ink on paper. But we're human beings, and so this is so critical when we're looking at our marketing because it feeds right into how we make decisions in our business. And ink blot tests are not a great method to run your business. So what do I mean? Well, I think a lot of people, especially I'm going to pick on the real estate investment industry because that's what I know, but there's a lot of folks that lean into survivorship bias, narrative bias, and false causality. So what does that mean in marketing? Well, anyone who's ever been to a seminar or has watched a webinar or anything like that, they've all seen survivorship bias. So, there are 100 people that try out some really new, awesome method for marketing. 100 of them try it out, one person succeeds. And then, they raise their hand, they bring them up, raise their hand, and say, this person won, look at this. They won because they're so awesome. And this method's so awesome. What they're disregarding is that 99% of the people failed. So it has a 99% failure rate and a 1% win rate. So, that's ridiculous. No one would do that, but we do it in our own business. Because, everybody's looking for a magic pill. Everybody wants the solution. And they fall prey to, having their disregarding any kind of reason to jump on the latest thing. Narrative bias is, when people are looking at their marketing funnel and they say, well, all of my sellers are 65 years old. Well, yeah, everyone that you're marketing to is 65 years old, or everyone that has a ton of equity, whatever, or, someone will say, well, all of my buyers come from these zip codes. Had this recently. Somebody said, all of my buyers come from these zip codes. And we said, what percentage of your deals are foreclosure? Oh, well, 90% of them. Okay. You think that has something to do with it? Because when we pull back the curtains and look at all the deals that are happening, that was actually a small fraction of the deals that were happening in that market. But these people believe that that's where all the deals happen because that was their experience. So that's a narrative bias, thinking that not looking at all of the transactions, but kind of guiding your business based on not what's happening in the market, but what your experience is. It's a horrible way to do things. It's a not profitable way, leaving a lot of money on the table. So the third thing I threw in here is false causality. And so, to pick on old people again, I think a lot of times it's like, well, I talk to people, and a lot of my sellers are older. Maybe I hear that sometimes. Well, it's not necessarily that they're old that is meaningful. Old people tend to have equity. Old people tend to have houses that need repairs that may have not been updated since the 70s or 80s or whatever. So there's all of these things that may be related, or they may be collinear, but they're not necessarily the cause. So you could have 100 people that are 85 years old and only one of them sells, which again means you have 99% of the population not doing that. And yet, that's your experience, and you say, well, it must be because they're old. No, it's because their house is out of shape, and that happens to be related to that. So using attribution as a way to cut to the truth and find out what's actually meaningful and feed it back into the system. So what does attribution actually tell us? Like, we're using this word, we've talked about this psychology, but what's it actually telling us? Well, what it tells us is, first of all, like when we look at how many people we marketed to last month, how many deals were there? How many of those did we touch? Well, we got in front of 34 people that sold to investors. How many people did we filter out? Well, there were 9 deals that we filtered out because we thought we'd use an equity filter, a length of ownership filter, or something like that. And we actually left 9 deals sitting on the table that would have been good deals and that we would have predicted, but we tossed them. Then we can see, how many did we actually miss? Like, what did we just flat out not talk to? How many people did we not talk to? And as much as that, like, should we have talked to them? Were those good deals or not? The other thing, is to say who actually got this transaction, like who closed it. So if I did touch them, who did they actually sell to? And here we can see, the site address, the city, all that, but we can see who the seller was, and we can see who they sold to. So I might say, hey, I marketed to, now that I actually have this information because I have an attribution report, I can actually say, okay, here's everything that's sold. I actually talked to this guy over on 722 Hancock. I talked to them. And they ended up selling to local Durham. Crap, why? Now you actually have a way to figure out how you lost the deal. And it's not guessing. It's actually, you're able to actually look and see who purchased it and how it went down. Like, where did it drop out? Sorry about that, guys. So it tells us how to improve. Right? And then that's the most important thing, is that we don't just want to know that we lost the deal. We want to know how to improve, like very specifically, did I not pay enough, whatever. So how does this actually work? What does attribution actually look like? Well, from our perspective, we're saying, okay, we have this data set, this optimized seller data set, and it's kind of in the core here. And we're going to say, okay, we're going to look at our data set and who did we market to in January 1st through February 1st? So with our initial data set, our optimized set, we might use that to text people. We might use it to call them. We might upload it to a digital campaign. We might mail them. We might do Facebook, whatever. But we're going to look at everything that was in our initial marketing, our optimized set, and then we're going to cross it against everything that's sold, right? Doesn't that seem rational? Sure. And from that, we're going to see who we missed, who we touched, who actually got that deal, and what we lost out on. I think I might have changed the dates. I should update these slides. I think I changed that from January to June, but it's the same. So why does this even matter, right? Well, it gives us a data-driven roadmap, right? It tells us not just like what we touched and what we mixed, but how to fix the leak in the funnel. Are we not paying enough? Did we not get in front of them on time? Did we not follow up with them? Did we talk to them and they wanted to sell and we didn't follow up? It tells us exactly where in our funnel things are broken. It's also telling us if our metrics are shifting. It helps us to mitigate our bias, right? So let's look at an example. Let's say we're going to look at Durham, North Carolina, from February 15th until March 15th. We look at our metrics and we say, geez, my conversions are down. I wonder why. Well, if you want to understand why, the first thing that you need to do is look at everything that's sold. Like, let's look at all the transactions that did happen and figure out which were deals and how we missed them, right? Or how we did get them. So we'll say, okay, during this time, our volume is down, but there were 51 transactions, there were 51 deals in the market. Without an attribution report, you may not know that, but now that you have one, you can say, okay, I know that there were 51 deals in that time period. I know what they were and who they went to. And I can take a look and say, all right, was it something that wasn't in my data? Did I market to them? So moving over to marketing, did I market to them and they didn't call? If they did call, did I, go on a sales appointment? And if so, did I close it? Did I get outbid, or did my sales guy get outsold? And beyond that, did they follow up? Like, did somebody sell? And my sales guy talked to them, and then they sold to somebody else. Maybe I was, had a gap on the follow up, right? So I can look at this report and say, all right, well, let's take a look here. First, here's who we got in front of. We got in front of 34 different people here. And you can see, the property address, again, like who bought it, who sold it, all that kind of stuff. You can see the price and all that. But we can look back and say, okay, we got in front of these 34 people. How many of them actually called us? Did we talk to these guys? There were 34 times. Did we talk to them? Did they call? That's a marketing thing. And if they did call, did they sell to us, right? But without a report, you just don't know that. And let's say that they sold to somebody else, and we need to do a competitor deep dive. Well, an attribution report allows you to do that, right? Because you can hop in, block this out to protect the innocent, but you can see who the competitors are. You can see the competitors and all the deals they did. You can see how many of them came on your list. So you're like, oh man, like this particular competitor took 23 of my deals last month. Yikes, that's a lot of money. You can hop in and you can click on any competitor and you can open up and see every single transaction that competitor did and really get a good understanding of whether they're just paying more than you or if they're just outselling you. Maybe they're out marketing you. But with an attribution report, you actually know that. So you can actually go back and make changes in real time. You can do things quickly to improve your business. So now, when you're looking at what was filtered out, you might say, geez, I wonder what I missed here. And you actually have a way to look at that. You say, oh, I filtered these guys out. Oh, man, I filtered these guys out on equity, but I actually would have done that deal. Maybe the information that's being provided on equity, which is a fake number divided by a fake number, it's a unamortized loan amount divided by an estimated value, which is certainly wrong for anything that's going to be a fix and flip property. Maybe I should loosen up my equity boundaries. Maybe I put a length of ownership flag on there and I said that they had to own it for a certain amount of time and I was wrong. Maybe you weren't wrong. But without actually having an attribution report to review, you don't know. You're guessing. And this stops the guessing. So the next thing that we can take a look at is, what we didn't get. And in the very same way, we can go back through and look and say, okay, how did I possibly miss this? How did I not come up with this? So once you know that, you can take this, your attribution report, and go through a process called active learning, which is feeding it back into the modeling so that every single month you're getting better and better. Every single month you improve and you can tighten it up, and you're also getting reporting to know what to fix. So the bottom line, I think, is that if you know, you can grow. But you got to know first. And that's why the attribution is so critical. That's why it's such a big piece of what's going on, I think, in the marketing industry in general, and that's fits directly into what we do here in real estate.